Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome everyone to Satsang. Nice to see you all. Or if you'd like to speak with me at some point, be sure to remember to turn your microphone on. So, this morning, again, I want to share with you an email that I received. It's very nice when you send emails to me during the in between times, between satsangs. Really is nice for everyone to hear your thoughts and give me the opportunity to comment on the things that you're working with every day in your sadhana. So I appreciate a great deal when you take the time to share your experience and your sadhana with me so that I can share it with everyone. So this person says, I'd like to receive some more guidance from you, and then describes their experience. I'm sure that some of you will be able to relate to this or to aspects of this anyway. Sometimes there is a lot of bliss. Grace is flooding, blessing, love everywhere. I am sitting in the lap of God, walking in God, and there is a huge light in me, shining like a diamond. It is just a simple feeling, so beautiful. And then this, after, when it's disappeared, it's like walking in the desert and I'm dry and no God, no love, nothing. In that state, I feel that I would give everything just to touch the cloth of God again and feel the grace, because there's no point to live without this. Honestly, I feel like I would like to die and end this suffering. After a while, more despair comes. I am angry. I feel no hope. I feel a tremendous amount of suffering. I feel that I'm tricked. I'm abandoned. And so I curse everything, literally everything. And I even argue with Bhagavan. In that state, it occurs to me that the mind is always lying. There really is no desert. It is just a mind. But if the desert is not true, then the bliss is not true either. Because there is an I who feels this and who knows the bliss as well. And there's more to this comment, but I just want to comment on this a little bit. I know that some of you can relate to this or parts of this. to this way in which the mind runs back and forth from bliss to despair. The thing that's so beautiful about this comment is that it shows the kind of attention that can be brought to this crazy mind, to this mind that is trying to find first some kind of solace in the bliss and then some kind of despair. And when the bliss is here, it fears the despair. And when the despair is here, it's racing around trying to find some way back to the bliss. Can you relate to this in some way? Maybe not this intensely. Maybe it's less for you. If you have a quiet mind, if you have a peaceful mind, now, as a consequence of your sadhana, this may only be a memory for you. This may be a place that you passed through long ago. Or if you have a naturally quiet mind, you maybe haven't passed through this at all. But many, many people, myself included, can look back in memories and can see this kind of experience where the mind is just torn and blown back and forth between bliss and despair. But because this sadak is standing in the middle of this, and the reason I say standing in the middle of this is because this description is so vivid, isn't it? This is the proof that what is happening here is the sadak is standing squarely in the middle of experience and knows it intimately, can describe it very, very well, both in its bliss stage and in its stage of despair. So this is the indicator that the instruction to stand in our experience is being followed. So beautiful. The reason it's beautiful is not because of the way that the mind is behaving, but because the sadak comes to the recognition that the mind is always lying. It's just a mind. There is no desert. It is not true. This is the fruition, the blessing of the realization in our practice, in our sadhana. I am not this. I am not this. I am not this. The beauty of what's happening here is that even though she knows at some point, maybe not in the middle of the bliss or the middle of the despair, but at some point, the recognition comes, I am not this. I am not this bliss. I am not this despair. There is no desert. This is all just mind. This is the fruition of the sadhana, neti neti, not this, not this, with the recognition that this kind of understanding comes not by saying not this and swatting everything away as a way of avoiding, but rather by saying, I have looked at these things. I see very clearly this is illusion and I am not this. Makes no difference whether what's present is the experience of bliss or the experience of despair. I am not this. This is the fruition of the practice that in Sanskrit is referred to as neti neti, not this. And she realizes the reason that these experiences are false, even great bliss, right? A lot of times, what we are always trying to get to is this experience of bliss. Maybe we've had it before, maybe just for a split second, maybe for many hours, but we're always trying to get back to it. But at this point, it's understood the reason this is false is because there is an I experiencing it. This is not the natural state of Sahaj Samadhi. When the bliss is here, and I've done it through great effort, I've brought it about. Now I recognize that this I that was trying to escape from the despair is what has created in the mind a false sense of bliss. This is why Sri Bhagavan said, understand that if something comes and it goes, it is not the truth. So though we may experience great bliss at some moments in our sadhana, if that bliss is not firm, if it doesn't stay, if it's not an underlying foundation of happiness in our experience, if it's artificially brought about through controlling the breath, controlling the diet, controlling the surroundings, and so on, ultimately it will leave. This is not to say that it isn't very pleasant and that we don't naturally gravitate toward that sense of bliss, peace, and calm. We do. This is an important part of our sadhana. But if it goes and the opposite comes, excuse me, the despair follows, then what we can know is that we have more work to do. There's more to understand about our experience. So we continue to stand in our experience. And they go on. After having said, I realize this is false because there is an I. Both of these states are mind generated. She says, also, I remember a story about a princess who meditated on God, and after a while she saw a light, etc., etc. But she was so determined, so she did not stop to enjoy the light, but continued her investigation. When this dry state is over, then there was bliss again. And then she says about herself, I started to remember this story of the princess and started questioning that the light in me is real, wondering if the light in her is real. And I start to go beyond the grace. And I begin to follow the I rope more deep down toward the bottom. So she's giving to us her own experience. This is happening quite naturally now. That the wisdom of her own being is beginning to say to her, fall through it, fall through the experience of bliss and the experience of despair. Follow the I back to its origin. She says, I am following the I rope, pulling herself back into the self. And then she says, but then something happens, something comes. I feel that something is wrong, right? This thought comes in the mind. As she tries to go deeper, she says, the thought comes to me, something is wrong here. Where is this coming from? Can you tell? This is coming from that egoic mind, right? That is trying to pull her back, stop her from going deeper. I'm not sure what is happening. And suddenly the bliss has just gone and the anxiety has come and stays. So in this moment, for this brief moment, the mind has won. It has pulled her back into the belief that she is the body She is the mind. This is the experience of this. It's so beautiful, this description. She says, the next day, I don't want to investigate anymore. Have you felt this? You've had some opening, some experience, some recognition of who you are as the self, immediately followed by anxiety and a period of time, an hour a day, when you just feel like, I don't want to do this anymore. Such a beautiful description of this experience. She says, I just want to enjoy and hold on to this grace. It is so nice. And I feel shame about my behavior, this falling back into this ego state, this anxiety. She says, I feel shame about my behavior and I bow down. So surrender is already coming again. This natural state of realizing you have no option. You cannot go back. You cannot go forward. All you can do is surrender in the now. She says, I feel that I feel this is not right. She's describing what's going through her mind now. That I take the bliss, but I refuse to take the suffering. So there is more shame, lots of crying. I feel that I failed. I betrayed my faith, the teaching, and I deserve nothing. This is falling very deeply into the despair. But what I want you to notice is that she is not giving up. She is standing in it. On some level, this is the gesture of the bow. She is accepting what is happening in her experience and offering it to the divine, not running from it, not denying it, offering it to the divine. Some of you have heard me say before or in another satsang, don't be surprised if someday you find yourself crying in a ball on the floor. This happens to many, many practitioners, many sadhaks. This is that moment of ultimate surrender where you cannot go forward, you cannot go back, and you feel like you are just consumed by the despair. But it's not the despair of the divine, it's the despair of the ego, which is trying to pull you back into the belief that you are the mind and the body. She continues, but after a while, remember, now this is what I mean, she is standing in it. After a while, I become so curious. What is this I? Even in this despair, it is the surrender of the ego which brings up this question. What is suffering here? What is this mind? Who is this I that thinks she is suffering through all of this? And she says, and anxiety still comes. So even in the midst of this anxiety, there is this question, who is this I? And this curiosity. This is so important, isn't it? We've talked about this in the past, how important persistence, curiosity, these qualities of mind, even though they may not be ultimately very strong in us at any given moment, at the moment that we feel, I can't do this anymore, I don't know what to do now, this is the moment when the momentum of sadhana, the momentum of our tapas can shine through the despair, through the question, through the curiosity. What is it that is suffering here? She says, and now I am totally exhausted. So I could not develop stability at all. And yet she continues with her sadhana, asking this question, who is it that is having this experience? She's invited this question by standing in her experience and surrendering, bowing down, accepting her experience, not because it is a measure of who she is, but rather because she is throwing herself on the mercy of her sadhana and saying, show me. And now at this point, she asks in her email to recommend something when she reaches this point where she has stood in the despair and the question has come again. What is this I? And this curiosity is there. Now she wants to know, how do I proceed further? How do I penetrate more deeply at this point? Because this is a difficult point, isn't it? You have realized that you cannot go forward, you cannot go back, and you are here in this despair. But once this curiosity has begun to arise again, what this means is the despairing part of the momentum of your conditioning. This despairing part is starting to loosen. It's starting to break apart. The reason it's doing this is because you are not giving up. You are saying, okay, fine. This is what's here now. I bow down and I ask, who is this I that is suffering like this in this moment? This can break the illusion of ego right at this moment. So she asks, what's the practice or what's the sadhana at this moment? Having come to this place, something I found very, very useful was to ask or to pray, whatever words you want to use, but to follow this curiosity, who is this I, with the prayer, with the request, show me what is real. This question arose in my sadhana at this moment. The moment is the moment of recognition. I am not the mind. Therefore, I am not the bliss created by mind. I am also not the anxiety created by mind. I have recognized in this moment that this experience, these experiences, which I have all the time, are not real. She clearly understands that this is a big wave and a trough, and that this is something that goes on continuously throughout her conditioning, but especially in deep sadhana, deep tapas. The energetic movement is up and down like a wave. So there's a recognition, very clear. This cannot be real. This is based in the I story, not in the I in its pure form, but the I in its conditioned form. This is not true. Scripture tells us this, and now in her own experience, she sees this is not me. This is not real. Now the field is ripe for you to ask the question, what is real? If all of this, pleasant and unpleasant, bliss and anxiety, if these are not real, what is real? And then to wait in the silence of that moment. What is real? Show me what is real. What is this? Who am I speaking to when I say, show me what is real? This is the self I am speaking to. Each of you possess the wisdom of your own nature and your own being. When the mind is experiencing great bliss or great anxiety or swinging back and forth between the two, still present in this experience is this quality that in scripture is called veiling of the mind. She points to it very specifically when she says, now I realize that there is no truth in this bliss and there is no truth in this anxiety. Both are a product of I, of me, and of mine. In that moment of recognition, if you say in your heart, deep in your own being, show me the real, the possibility is there for the truth of your own being to be unveiled completely through the grace of your sadhana. This is why I am always pointing you back to the awareness which you are, which is before your experience, and encouraging you to understand that it makes no difference what the experience is that you're having. It makes no difference. If you stand in the recognition, I am that which is aware, now you have the possibility of falling through the experience of pleasure, pain, bliss, anxiety, and so on in the mind, into the field of awareness itself, and breaking the bonds and stepping into freedom that will last. So this question, what is real? Or this statement, show me what is real, is another way in which we can fall through the experiences, even in their difficulty. And come to this moment where we understand, I am not this thought. I am not this body. I am not this experience. I am that which is aware. Here, now, regardless of what is showing up on the screen of perception. And to understand in a very profound way that that which is here is always here. No matter what experiences, perceptions, thoughts, feelings, sights, sounds, and so on appear in the mind. I did have the opportunity to receive a follow-up email to this one yesterday. And so I can report that after this experience, and actually she said after writing all of this out in such fine detail, and some of you know this experience, some of you are very kinesthetic in the sense that if you write something down or you record something, that often causes it to dissolve. And so this wisdom, which she is moving toward in this description, examining very carefully what is going on in the mind and in the perception, whether the experience is bliss or it's anxiety or despair, examining very closely what it's seeing very carefully, what is happening, what is this mind doing, and then writing it down. Then she reports, in the very exercise of this, it all just dissolved, it all just fell apart. And this is also something it's very important for us to understand. When we're doing this kind of deep sadhana, if we can just remember that this is in a way you can say, this is the mind unraveling itself, so that the self, which is behind this experience, can penetrate through. This is the self unraveling the mind. If you can remember this, then you can stand firm, even though you're crying. You can be present in your experience, even though you want to run. And in this experience, the conditioning drops. If it doesn't drop, now remember, she talks about this. When she's talking about this, she says, this happened, and then tomorrow this happened, and then the next day this happened. So she's also showing us that this experience, though sometimes can be very quick, can happen that quick in the mind, can't it? Because the mind is very fast. So all of this can unfold very quickly. But for many people, the sadhana unfolds more deeply over many, many days or many, many weeks. This is why I say to you, don't be afraid to stand in your experience, no matter how difficult it is. You are strong enough. You are wise enough. You can do this. And through doing this, you gain the strength to understand that you possess the kind of wisdom that through the teaching, through the teacher, through the guru, whatever, you have the strength to be able to move into your own heart and establish yourself on a firm foundation of self-love and radiance. It may not be easy, It may take some time, but you are capable. Your wisdom, the wisdom of the self, is there within you. Persist, stay firm, keep coming back. Even if you have to take a break overnight, for a day, for a week, keep coming back to this call of the self, which knows itself to be being, consciousness, and bliss. The natural state of divine love. This is your nature. Beneath all of your experience. So thank you for sharing. So grateful. And for the rest of you, please understand that this process that we've been describing today is always available to you. If you want to share your experience in between the satsangs, you can do this. And as she's indicated to me after this, by sharing this with herself, but appearing to share it with me, but sharing it with herself, her innate wisdom begins to shine through. She begins to see what is real. So please, if you feel in between satsangs to share your experience, understand that you are sharing it with the self. You are acknowledging what you are experiencing. And if you choose to share it with me so that it can be shared with others, then I'm very grateful for that. This is also part of the process that can be a very important part of your sadhana, is that in the moment when you're experiencing something, you're not waiting until the following Sunday and hoping that you can hear something that will address your difficulty, but rather that in the moment as you're experiencing it, you get it down on paper, get it out of the mind, put it out into the heart of being so that it can be reflected back at you and you can move through it at that time. So many times, I know that many of you have reported this experience. So many times it's true that we're having some experience like this, where there seems to be despair, anxiety, confusion. These things are there in our sadhana. And because of the instruction, keep quiet, we think, well, I shouldn't share this with anyone. I shouldn't reveal this to anyone. I don't want to reveal myself in this way. This isn't good. I'm not getting it. I'm failing. She says this in her message. I'm failing. I feel like I'm failing. But you know, it is through this failing, this apparent failing, is that we begin to realize the limitations of the mind. And we open ourselves to the possibility that through devotion and through surrender into the moment, no matter how uncomfortable, the wisdom of being, the truth of the self can begin to shine. But it can't do that if we're holding on to some sense of denial or some sense of the personal. I shouldn't share this with anyone. I shouldn't reveal myself in this way. This is not an excuse to go around telling everybody you know about your story, but to share your story with yourself and with others that you trust and with others that you know have probably had some kind of experience similar to your own, is to give yourself the opportunity to fall through this story of me into the heart of love, into the heart of being. So give yourself that opportunity if you need it.